The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm gonna say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Spellbreakers. It's Friday night on Badlands, and tonight's episode of Spellbreakers is brought to you in part by My Pillow.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, My Pillow mattresses and My Pillow mattress toppers as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Yes, good evening again. And tonight, let's see. Let's just say hi for a minute. Yes, it is Bitcoin Pizza Day. We'll get to that in a moment. So tonight's, I noticed that our Friday night lineup here on Badlands has changed, and that tonight, at least, I don't know if it's permanent, we have, we used to have Why We Vote with Ash and CatCon leading into the show, and now we have G Money with his show Rug Pull Radio. And so if there's anybody coming over from Rug Pull Radio, welcome to come on over. And it's good to see you. It's good to see you. And yes, we like Bitcoin too, and that's why I put up tonight. Today is Bitcoin Pizza Day. Should we start with that? If in case you didn't know, Bitcoin Pizza. Maybe you all know what Bitcoin Pizza Day is, but just in case you don't know what Bitcoin Pizza Day is, here's a graphic for it. I saw this. I stumbled across this today. I didn't know it was Bitcoin Pizza Day today. Not Pizza Gate Day, but Bitcoin. That would be weird. Bitcoin Pizza Day. So what is Bitcoin Pizza Day? It is Bitcoin Pizza Day celebrates the 16th anniversary of the first commercial transaction with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin came out. It started. It was issued in January of 2009, and people started buying it, selling it. But it was when it first came out, people thought of it was going to be a way to an alternative to the dollar, just for ordinary transactions. Was the idea that it was sold with it first. It's become more of an investment vehicle, something you buy and hold and speculate on, etc. But when it first came out, people said, "Oh, it's going to be just for buying and selling things, so that you don't have to do it with the fiat currency." And maybe it will become that again. But there were some wrinkles along the way that it didn't become that. But early on, people didn't quite know that yet. And so in 2010, when it was still first early on in Bitcoin, and there hadn't been, nobody had really bought anything with it yet, like they said they were going to do. So what they did was, there was a guy, his name was Laszlo Hajdich, I think his name was, and he lived in Florida. He was a software engineer in Florida. And he belonged to a Bitcoin group down there that was the early enthusiasts. And he said, I want to buy something with Bitcoin. And there was this new way to buy things with Bitcoins called the Lightning Network, that sort of was a way for people to trade Bitcoins and maybe buy things with it that had been established. And he said, I want to try this out. I want to buy something. I want to buy a pizza with Bitcoin, he said. And he put this in a news group, and he said, I'll pay this much for if somebody will bring me a couple pizzas. And on 16 years ago today, someone did that, and he paid them in Bitcoin to deliver. It was Papa John's Pizza, and he delivered it, and he paid them the Bitcoin, and it became the first. And it was two pizzas for delivery, and we now call it Bitcoin Pizza Day. I heard about this when it happened. That's how long I've been aware of Bitcoin. I heard about this when it happened in real time. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a good thing to happen. So the pizzas were $41, and you might be wondering, they were $41 in US dollars at the time. That's how much they cost. So he translated that into the Bitcoin price at the time, and he paid the guy. He paid him 10,000 Bitcoins, because Bitcoins were worth nothing then. 10,000 Bitcoins for these two pizzas, and so how and now that's worth. If you look at the spot price of Bitcoin right now, is about $75,000. Last time I checked, $76,000, I think. So the 10,000 Bitcoins that he paid this guy are now worth about $750 million. So now the guy did not buy and hold them. The guy who got them, he didn't hold on to them, I think. I was just reading some articles about this, and so the pizza. I think the pizzeria was in Jersey City, but I thought he lived in Florida. I don't know if I have all the details right, but it's celebrating Bitcoin Pizza Day today. So everybody, if you're coming over from G Money's podcast, I'm sure that they talked about this today. So I just want to welcome G Money and Rug Pull Radio to Friday night and say, here we are, and we're very happy to have you. And this is my way of saying hello, is to celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day along with you today. And we got other things to talk about today too. But let's so we can take that off the screen. Oh, here's the here's the actual exchange. This is the actual news group exchange where the guy's like, can you buy me this? And he's, yeah, I'll do that to you. And they agree on the price of 10,000 Bitcoins. So there you go. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Let's say hello to everybody in the chat. Let's say hello to everybody. Hello, fellow waiters. Cloud Topper. Hello. Good evening, wonderful Spellbreakers. Eleanor 2000 says, looking for a Thucydides Trap discussion. Yeah, we're going to talk about Thucydides Trap, what that means. We'll cover that a bit. Yeah, I just want to sort of have fun tonight. It's been such a weird, the news is just getting weirder and weirder, isn't it? Like we don't know whether it's good or bad news. Like Tulsi Gabbard today, was that, what's going on with that? We don't know. There's the cover story, but we don't know about that. We don't know really what's going on much with anything, but we trust that somehow good things seem to be happening. And the war hasn't gone off the rails, and we can sort of keep forward with our thesis that it's part of bringing down the deep state and the global empire, which we're going to talk about today, because that Thucydides Trap involves this idea that we're in the midst of fighting a war against the deep state British Empire, City of London, and all that. And it's sort of, it's one of those heavy academic ideas that comes out of a think tank, but we're going to make fun of it a little bit, because that's what we do here. All right, good. Yes, thank you, Green. So Green Ozone. Hello, Leslie Bayer, Trumpet. Hello, Daisy. All right. Good to see you. D Patriot 1776. CanCon rated the stream. Thank you, CanCon, for rating the stream from his Friday night show with his wife, Christy. Speaking of Florida, Claire Cat 367. Good evening. Good evening. Raw Shark Lives. Good evening. Lily Boston 143. Mud Girl AZ. Hello, Matic friends. Hello, hello, hello. Hello to all of you. Hello to everybody. Katie Rose. Rad for Liberty. Good evening, Professor. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It'll be a little professorial tonight because we're touching this academic subject. The Thucydides Trap. Yes, yes, indeed. Okay. Team Smooth. Yes. CanCon. Thank you, CanCon. Yes. Fitty Shrimp. I like that name. Hello. Hello, Royal Freedom 145. Good to see you. Marguerite Carlin. Hello. All right. Polaris Park. Hello. Hello. Okay. Are we stuck? Please don't tell me we're stuck. Okay. Sometimes my camera's been freezing lately. Not right at the moment, though. Good. All right. Well, yeah, let's just, well, first of all, it's tonight's episode of Spellbreakers. We got another sponsor. Let's take care of that right away. Tonight's episode of Spellbreakers is also brought to you. We're sponsored by My Pillow. We love My Pillow, and also by Tamarack Garden.
Your body doesn't need more synthetic fixes. It needs real plant medicine. Wild herbs are packed with minerals, adaptogens, and healing compounds your body actually recognizes and can use, supporting energy, immunity, and balance from the inside out. At Tamarack Garden, our supplements bring these overlooked weeds and wildflowers back into your daily routine. Don't just manage symptoms, support your body and eat your weeds. Head to tamarackgarden.com for $10 off your order of $50 or more when you use code Badlands at checkout.
All right. Thank you, Tamarack Gardens, for being a sponsor of our show tonight. And welcome to Badlands, everybody. All right. So, yeah, the deep state, the Thucydides Trap. Let's I do have, speaking of deep state, I got another news article. I got some news articles to throw in at the beginning here, just because we want to spice up the week, and we want to have a little fun on Friday night. We want to have a little fun. People listening, hope. All right, so let's see here. We're going to share our screen. That's what we're going to do, Matt. We're going to share our screen. Share screen. Okay. Tab, Chrome tab. Okay. First of all, Sammy the Squirrel sent me his weekly fact-based report on Iran. So, I was reading over it, checking in what's going on over there. Seems like, we're sort of holding steady on the narrative, right? And Trump, though, came back from his son's wedding, didn't go to his son's wedding because he needed to be back at the White House, and people are speculating on why. And we don't know why. I'm not going to speculate on why because I don't know, but maybe we'll find out. So thank you, Sammy, for that report. Like I said, I read it over. It's the Sammy the Squirrel newsletter. So Sammy's a longtime listener of the show, and I try to boost his things as he has been so kind in boosting me over the last couple of years. So what else speaking of deep state, here's another deep state article. What do we got here before? If you want to know what I read about most of the week, is AI stuff, because that's sort of what I have done for a living lately. And so I just read all the AI news stuff. And it was a weird week for AI. There was, I'm giving so I should explain. I'm giving a talk at a physics conference. It's going to be remote, unfortunately. I can't travel for it, but it's going to be for it's going to be a physics talk, but I'm going to talk about the use of AI in physics, and it's all based on somebody I know. I've known him since I was a kid, actually, but he went on to be a physicist like me, and he recently wrote a physics paper where he claimed that the idea for it was generated by ChatGPT. And then he used ChatGPT and other models to develop the ideas in the paper, and he actually wrote that into the paper. And he wrote a paper about how he wrote the paper, this physics paper, with ChatGPT helping him. And he claimed, I'm the first one to do this. He may not be the first one to do that, but first to publish about this process. And I thought it was very clever. So I decided to do a talk about him. And I sort of took it from there. But now we're sort of people are going crazy with this idea. I've just noticed in the last few weeks. I thought I was just going to talk about that paper by my friend. But just in the last few weeks, all of a sudden, everybody's talking about this idea of, can AI do science? Is AI capable of, well, it depends on the science, but is AI capable of doing physics theory, of actually developing physics theory? And all of a sudden, I'm seeing a lot of articles in Nature about this. It's a hot topic all of a sudden. So I'm going to give a talk about it in a couple of weeks, and I hope my colleagues will like it. It's not really exactly cutting-edge physics research, although I'm going to talk about my friend's paper, and it's sort of interesting. It's actually right up in the subject of the conference that we hold every 2 years. So that'll be good. I hope it'll be a good talk. Last time I gave a talk by Zoom at a physics conference, it wasn't very good. So I'm trying to make up for that. All right. So, but there was just this week, there was a big deal in the math community where there was an AI, and I don't remember which one it was. OpenAI. Okay, so it overturned a proof that had been established by a famous mathematician named Paul Erdős. And he came up with these conjectures, which are ideas he put forth without proof. And they're famous. They're really famous. Paul Erdős is famous. And then it's not sharing the screen. Isn't sharing the screen. Maybe I clicked don't share. So let's share the screen. Let me try again, just to show you. This is what the math paper looks. This is a paper, an academic paper about ChatGPT, how ChatGPT overturned one of the Erdős conjectures, which had to do with points lying in a plane, and it's very famous conjecture. And basically, ChatGPT, it was able to prove it wrong. And people reviewed it, and they're saying, yes, this seems to be legit. So all of a sudden, all of the mathematicians they're sort of wondering if they're next for having their jobs taken away by AI. And so welcome to my world, So okay, all right, where are we? Can we see it here? Where are we at? I'm not seeing it. I'll find it. Okay, we'll just show this for the moment. This is the Bitcoin price today. So again, we're honoring Bitcoin tonight. Speaking of math, Bitcoin came out of mathematics. The whole algorithm to generate Bitcoin and the cryptography of the blockchain and all this really is something that mathematicians gave to the world for good or for ill. I mean, I have nothing against it. And this is how I found out about that it was Bitcoin pizza day today. So, okay, where's this paper I was going to show you guys? All right. Maybe I closed the tab. Well, that's okay. Anyway, the mathematicians this week, they're having their moment of wondering if they're out of business because of AI. That's good enough. That's good enough to discussion of that. All right. I wanted to share this. Oh, I clicked stop sharing. Share this tab instead. Okay. All right. Okay. Make sure do we switch over? Do we switch? Okay. Yes. So we're going to pivot to the deep state because we're going to talk about the deep state a bit tonight because I love talking about the deep state. I love the history of the deep state, how it was formed. I can't get enough of that. It's one of my favorite things to talk about is how did the deep state form, and lately talking more about the roots of the deep state in the British Empire, which is something I knew a bit about because of my own research, but lately it's been coming up more. I know, like the Promethean Updates channel, they're talking. They clued me into what's going on with this Thucydides Trap thing, which we'll talk about what that means in a moment. So how it's a British psyop against the United States when you hear. So an AI screw. But for right now, let's talk about Sullivan and Cromwell. Sullivan and Cromwell is a famous law firm in New York, and it's well established. It's over 100 years old, and it's one of the white shoe firms, they call it, which is like the Ivy League guys wearing white leather shoes. That's an old term, right? And in some ways, it has been the house legal firm of the deep state in the CIA, if you will. Two of the famous partners of Sullivan and Cromwell were Allen Dulles, one time the first head of the CIA, first director of the CIA, to be precise, and John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State, right? And really, you're talking about the Dulles brothers. You're talking about really inner deep state players, right? And so, but Sullivan and Cromwell, the mighty Sullivan and Cromwell deep state law firm, had egg on its face this week by AI. So what they did is they became the latest in a list of victims of law firms and lawyers who got caught submitting documents to the court that are full of phony legal case citations that were hallucinated by AI. So in other words, they had AI generate some legal documents, and in I don't know if it was ChatGPT or whether it was Claude, and it said, we could probably find out here, and it said, yeah, here's some case law to support this arguments, and they didn't check it. That's where we are. Sullivan and Cromwell is submitting AI hallucinated documents to its court, and they got caught, of course. So this guy David Latt, he keeps a running total of like the thousands of law firms this has happened to. If you know Steve Leto's Law on YouTube, he also likes to cover these cases. All right, I see we did get a Sleep State gave a $2 pizza contribution. Thank you. So in Bitcoin, in 0.00002649, which in Bitcoins, that's more than that guy paid for the pizza in Bitcoin when it was 10,000 Bitcoins. Can you believe that? All right. Thank you, Spetzel, for sharing Sammy's link. It's almost like Sammy provides this. Okay, I'm just going to check in on the war and make sure that it's nothing extraordinary happened, because mostly it's been sort of the same kind of news lately, but that could all change in a minute, of course. All right. So thank you. Thank you. That was very nice of you. Sleep state. Okay. So back to Sullivan and Cromwell hallucinating. So tonight brings huge news out of Sullivan and Cromwell. We can now add Sullivan and Cromwell, truly one of the world's most prestigious and profitable firms, to the AI Hall of Shame, the list of law firms that have submitted court filings containing AI-generated hallucinations. On Saturday, April 18th, Andrew Dieterich, founder and co-head of Sulcrom's Global Restructuring Group, that sounds ominous, the Global Restructuring Group, said, yeah, it sounds nasty, sent a letter to Chief Judge Martin Glenn of U.S. Bankruptcy Court, Southern District of New York. In his missive, Dieterich apologized profusely for a motion filed by S&C in a bankruptcy case that contained inaccurate citations and other errors, which he helpfully listed for Chief Judge Glenn, in a 3-page attachment, because there were that many. The 3 pages were single-spaced. As you would expect, this AI screw-up by S&C has been covered by, well, everybody, including Above the Law, Bloomberg Law, Business Insider, Law 360, Reuters, and now here on Spellbreakers has covered it too. I don't have to add to the copious coverage, and we're covering it mostly because it's deep state. It's mock the deep state news. I'll just point to 2 ironies. Okay. Noted by Joe Patrice of Above the Law, Sullivan and Cromwell is the law firm that advises OpenAI on the safe and ethical deployment of artificial intelligence, a representation S&C touts on its website. Okay, physician, heal thyself. Second, as Dieterich explained in his letter to Chief Judge Glenn, the AI errors were called to his attention by Boyes, Schiller, Flexner. Why is it ironic that BSF, one of the nation's leading litigation firms, caught these mistakes? Because until now, Boyes, Schiller was the reigning champion of elite law firms guilty of AI fails. You just love this, don't you? Just love this. One of the things when I give my talk at my physics conference, this is going to come up, I'm sure. It's like, what if your AI helps you with a physics paper? Is it going to hallucinate references to physics papers? And I'm going to say, so far, I've used AI a lot in looking at physics papers and telling me about things, and so far it hasn't generated any phony references, because I track them all down, because I think that's part of my job. It's the least I can do as a courtesy to people who are going to read my work or listen to my talk, that I can make sure that it's real papers. A lot of times I already know the papers that they're going to cite, like if they're famous ones, like some by I'm looking at ones by Schrödinger, like Schrödinger's cat. There's a bunch of papers by him that I'm just going to list in. So because it's been 100 years exactly since Schrödinger published his work that led to the development of the quantum mechanics and the wave function 100 years ago, like this spring. And I'm just going to mention that because the title of my talk is 100 years since the Schrödinger equation. Is AI ready to take over yet? That's my talk. And that's going to piss off some of my colleagues. They're going to, but what the heck? I like to have fun at conferences. Like I do here on the show. I like to talk about this kind of thing. So, okay. So it goes on and on, but you got to love it. You got to love it that Sullivan and Cromwell, of all people, the Dulles brothers firm. Who also worked for Sullivan Cromwell was George Clooney's wife, Amal Clooney, world-renowned barrister, human rights barrister, Amal Clooney. Yeah, she's also S&C, I guess. All right. So we'll all feel sorry for them for a moment, right? Sorry for them. Little schadenfreude. Now let's talk about this. Share this tab instead. Destined for war. Can America and China escape Thucydides Trap? Okay, so I did have some slides, but let's just show these here. So Thucydides Trap. Well, let's show the slides. Okay, let's do that. Okay, why not? Why not? Nah, it's too much work. Just say that last week. So last week, President Trump was in China on a state visit, and it was. I'm sure y'all saw it. It was in the news, and with President Xi of China. And Trump brought, of course, a whole bunch of people with him, including Elon Musk and a bunch of other of his pals, tech bros, as you might, basically representing America's industry there. And he also brought Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, along with him. Really a huge contingent. And they met with Xi, and Trump sort of took over the meeting, but Xi gave a speech, and he said he basically. He mentioned this thing, this Thucydides Trap. The Thucydides Trap. Oh, we should share my slides because they've got stuff about that I want to. So, all right. Yeah, let's do this. Let's share the screen. All right. The Thucydides Trap is a deep state psyop. What the heck is this Thucydides Trap? Well, Xi brought it up. And basically what he did by doing that was basically bring up a notion that's been popular among Western academics for the last 10 years or so in Ivy League schools about governance and history. And the idea is U.S. and China, well, the U.S. is a great empire, has been, and that China is the up and coming power, and the Thucydides Trap is it's really not anything profound. The name sounds more profound than what it is. It really is just the idea, as far as I can tell, that at various points in history you have an established empire on the decline, and then you have an up and coming rival empire or power, great power, that's ascending, and at some point the established power begins to fear the loss of its status, and that this is a dangerous situation, and this will then often result in war, a great war breaking out between the two of them, and basically triggered by the fear of the existing empire over the loss of its power. Does this sound like everything you've heard about about the West and America and white people and men? Oh, their time is over, losing power, and they're afraid, and they're going to lash out. So that's sort of the idea. It's not like the Thucydides Trap is sort of a fancy way, academic way of describing this notion, but it really, it has that stink, the stink of wokeness about it, of just another way of the establishment to say, oh yes, America's on the decline. And Trump basically just took the ball and just slammed it back in the basket and said, well, you're talking about Biden. We were, but we're not anymore. Where are they? And that's one of the reasons he, maybe he brought all those the tech guys with him. It's like, no, we're the up and we're still the one. We're still the one. You ain't it. You just think you are. And but you can't blame Xi for bringing it up. I mean, it's something that the Western, again, our great subverters are right here in the West with us, wanting to tell us, make sure that we know that we're on the decline. So the Thucydides. Let's talk about the meaning of that term. Okay. So last week we did a show on ancient history. It was sort of fun. I liked it. And I mentioned Thucydides. Who is Thucydides? What is that word? It's a name. It's a name of an ancient Greek historian, one of the most famous ancient Greek historians, and maybe the first ancient Greek historian who seems completely modern, even though he lived 2,500 years ago. He seems very modern because he didn't write legends he didn't write things like, oh, this came from the gods, and then human beings founded a city. He didn't write in that way. He wrote in a way that modern people would recognize completely as legitimate history. He said, this is what happened. This is as far as I can tell. I investigated this. And he lived at the time this was going on. So, but he still went out and did research, found out, this is what happened, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and finally this happened. And he wrote it like that, which seems very modern. That's the way we want our histories to be. Just don't tell me what happened, right? At least that's what we used to want histories to be. Though Thucydides, who he was maybe not the very first to do something like that. There was a guy named Herodotus who had done that about 50 years before him. Who also included stuff about legends, like, oh, the Phoenicians say that they came from this god, etc. And he reported that. He didn't just he went to Phoenicia and he listened to them and he reported that. But Thucydides is more like a journalist. He's really truly a good journalist, not like the kind we have now who just makes stuff up, right? But a good journalist. So the key here is that Thucydides as a brand that has a lot of gravitas to it as being a voice of authority, truth, and accuracy. So it gives this idea of the Thucydides trap a sort of an extra oomph in terms of its what it means, right? It's good. So anyway, so the headlines, I just typed in Thucydides trap into Google, and it gave me a bunch of articles about this incident overseas where she brought up this notion that's been popular among Western academics, basically to remind Trump of, well, even your side, we all agree, Now, whether she actually believes that or not, but he used it as a rhetorical thing, right? Just to say, as we all know, America is on the decline and China's on the upswing. That was why he said that. So, yeah, she warned Trump against the Thucydides trap. Here's what ancient Greece can tell us about U.S.-China relations. The Economic Times, Trump returned exactly as he went. China summit falls into Xi's Thucydides trap with failed talk. So basically the Economic Times so the idea it's a trap is that these two powers, they get locked into this rivalry, and then they can't get out and there's war. And so the Economic Times is basically saying, well, looks like we might be headed for war because of this Thucydides trap. This was maybe the last chance to get out of it. The trap being going to war. That's what that means. It's not a very sophisticated. I thought it was going to be a really sophisticated thing that Thucydides had written about, and really it just comes from one line in Thucydides about the war. We'll get to that in a minute. But what is the Thucydides trap, and why did Xi Jinping mention it at his meeting with Donald Trump? There's a statue of Thucydides, and the caption says, "A statue of the Greek historian Thucydides." So this is the Guardian. The Thucydides trap refers to the idea that when a rising power threatens to displace an established one, it can lead to war. And that's really it. That's really it. So the guy who wrote a book about this, we'll get to him in a moment. He just sort of put forth this notion, said it was raised by Thucydides in the context of the war he was writing about. And then he picked out, he said, well, I'm going to look at 16 examples from history where there was European history, where there was a rising power and an established power. And in most cases, it led to war. So we should sort of be concerned. And he wrote it specifically, the guy, he was at Harvard, wrote it specifically in the context of warning about a war impending between China and the United States. And this was back in 2012 when he wrote this, back when Obama was president. So, and we all know Obama's a great peacemaker. So, he was really bucking the trend there. Of course, I'm joking. Really, this is, all the Obama presidency was about programming into us that the U.S. was in decline and possibly was headed for defeat in a war. So Thucydides, here's a bust of him. So this is actually supposedly what it looks like. This is an ancient Roman work that's a copy of a Greek work. A lot of our surviving things we have from Greece are actually Roman copies. I think this was made maybe when he was alive. So he lived at a time. He doesn't live in old Greek times. He lived when things had picked up and when recorded history was happening. He just lived a little bit before Plato lived. So, and his famous work that you may have read is called the Peloponnesian War, and so we'll talk about that in a moment. So the Peloponnesian, by the way, that refers to the Peloponnesus. The Peloponnesus is a geographic term. So it's a war that happened in the Peloponnesus. There's the Peloponnesus. The Peloponnesus is that part of Greece that looks like a hand that's just barely attached to the mainland. And it is technically a peninsula, although it's not usually what you think of as a peninsula. It's connected to mainland Greece by a very narrow strip of land. And a lot of the ancient cities of ancient Greece were on the Peloponnesus, like Sparta, which is important, and Mycenae, which is where Agamemnon was the king, but long time before the Peloponnesian War, the time of the Trojan War, actually, and others, Argos, okay, but not Athens. Athens is not on the Peloponnesus. Athens is part of more of the mainland peninsula that's down there. So there was here it is. Here's the Peloponnesus. You can see, and you can see how it's there's a narrow strip of land that connects it to the mainland part of Greece, and they're ancient. You know what city was on that strip of land? Was ancient Corinth was on that strip of land. Sparta was down more towards the fingers down there of the glove, but Corinth was on the strip of land between. It still is. There's still Corinth, but it's not ancient Corinth. It's nearby the ancient ruins, but it's on that. The ancient one was on that strip of land between the body of water that juts inland. That's the Gulf of Corinth, and then I think the Gulf of Megara, I think, is on the other side. Anyway, so to get by land to and from the Peloponnesus, you have to go over that narrow strip of land. So it's very strategic. Corinth. So that's Corinth, by the way, that Paul, writing to the Corinthians, he wrote 2 epistles to the Corinthians. That's that Corinth, but much later, when Paul was there, much later than, Paul was in Corinth maybe like 500 years after the Peloponnesian War. Think about that. That's how much history we're talking about here. Oh, there's, just for fun, there's the strip of land, and there's Corinth right there. All right, so let's just like I said, the Peloponnesian War is not. It's not old Greece. Like if you took a timeline of Greece, starting from the earliest legends the Greeks had, that would be which is the Trojan War. Now there are, of course, the myth of like creation of the earth by the gods, etc. But we're talking human ones. Really, the Trojan War is sort of the origin story of the Greek people in a lot of ways. Not technically origin story, but really a lot of their mythology descends from that. And for a long time, that's because the characters of the Trojan War are the ones in the Iliad and the Odyssey. There's the Odyssey adaptation is about to come out, and there was a movie about the Trojan War based on the Iliad and the Odyssey, starring Brad Pitt 20 years ago. So that's a Trojan War, and the Trojan Horse, and Achilles, and Agamemnon, and Hector, and Priam, and all the rest, the Helen, Cassandra, Clytemnestra, all of them. That's the Trojan War. Okay. And a lot of Greek literature is based on that. And for a long time in the modern West, everybody thought the Trojan War didn't ever happen; it was just made up. But then they found, basically, they unearthed the site that was, this is probably Troy. And now we think the Trojan War actually did happen, and it really was a real event, and it happened around just before about 1200 BC. Is the time frame of that. Now the Iliad and the Odyssey then are written down much later, though. They're they're poems, epic poems written in verse. They're ascribed to someone we call Homer. But we don't know if Homer was a real person or a bunch of people or just a collective name for oral tradition. But, it's one of those things. It's like the Trojan War or, a lot of other things. If we find out that we think something's a myth and we find out it actually happened, that's sort of not an uncommon pattern in archaeology and ancient history. So maybe someday they'll prove that there was a person named Homer. And by the way, the Trojan War and Homer lived, they lived 400 years apart. So it took Homer's 400 years after the Trojan War. So, is it accurate history? We can assume there was an oral tradition, right, of Achilles and all this stuff. But it took until it was actually written down. You see, it was sort of thought, oh, you don't need to write it down because we'll just learn it. It was like the oral tradition, right? You just learn it, and then you recite it over hundreds of years. Or maybe Homer composed it from scratch. We don't know. We just don't know. But that was about 750 BC. So to people in the time of Thucydides, which is about the same time as Plato and Socrates, height of classical Greece, to them, Homer was way, way in the past, way, way in the past. And the Trojan War was way, way more even in the past, hundreds of years, 300 years, over 300 years after Homer. So that shows you the time scales we're talking about. But anyway, so Iliad and the Odyssey date from around that time. And then real sort of classical era of Greece begins about 500 BC. And what happened then was that the Persian Empire, which was then at its height, and this comes into the Thucydides trap. The Persian Empire, which was then at its height, really it had been invading Greece. It invaded the part of Greece that's now Turkey, the Asia Minor, which is where the Trojan War took place in Asia Minor. And that's where Homer lived in Asia Minor, had lived. All this had taken place hundreds of years. But the Persian Empire was then at its height. It was very mighty. It invaded Greece and it conquered a bunch of the Greek city-states that were on Asia Minor, the mainland. And then it was going to invade the peninsula of Greece. And that's, of course, the Persian Wars, this is called. And they brought their huge army, and the Greeks were just a bunch of city-states with small armies, but very determined men. And this would be the movie 300 takes place during the Persian invasion, during the Persian War. And there was a historian who wrote down a history of the Persian Wars called Herodotus, who is the guy, like I said, he's the one who went and he included myths and legends, but he did so sort of in an what we call anthropological way. He went to Egypt, he studied with the Egyptians, and he learned their mythologies, and he said, well, this is what the Egyptians believe, you can take it or leave it. And so basically he's very modern in that sense, but he's not so much a journalist in the sense that I guess he's more than a journalist than the way Thucydides is going to be. So to fend off the Persians, the Greek city-states really had to band together, like they did in the movie 300, led by Sparta. Was the this tip of the spear, if you will, literally. And they stopped them at the Battle of Thermopylae, a special tight, narrow pass. They were able to stop the Persians, and it preserved Greek freedom. And out of that era comes classical Greece and the height of Greek civilization. Because they were able to defend themselves against the Persians and not be just integrated into their empire like the Borg. Okay. That's a Star Trek reference. Star Trek Next Generation reference. The Borg. All right. So that comes and goes. And the two city-states that come out of the Persian Wars with the most elevated standing among their peers are Athens and Sparta, which have very different societies. Sparta is militaristic, very tightly controlled society in terms of how people live their lives. Plato thought Sparta was the ideal society. Plato, who lived in Athens. Athens was the had technically a democracy where every free citizen could vote, and every free citizen had to serve in government at some point too. But they had they were much more liberal society in the sense that there was open thought of at least for a while until they didn't want it anymore. And they had a strong army too. Athens did, but they had a really powerful navy. And so in the wake of the Persian Wars around by 450 BC, you have these two strong city-states, and with powerful army, powerful navy, and their rivals. And it might have been okay, but one of the two city-states sort of turned into an asshole and decided to sort of dominate its neighbors. And which city was that? It was Athens. Athens became sort of the asshole among city-states. They were so elevated because of the Persian Wars. They basically put other Greek city-states around in the Greek islands, under their domination. And that was really resented by some of them. The other ones in the islands, they had to pay tribute to Athens, and they didn't like that. And so there was a lot of resentment build up, and eventually led to a war between Sparta, which represented the reaction to this, and Athens, which was trying to preserve its new empire. And so this is the subject, and it went on for 27 years, back and forth. And during that time, there was a plague in Athens that devastated Athens, hemorrhagic fever plague, we think, and around 430 AD, about a year into the war. And there was, there were battles, and sometimes there'd be one side would dominate over the other. But Athens got a little bit cocky. And in the midst of the war, during a break in the war, they actually decided they were going to go conquer Sicily. Yeah, the island where there were Greek colonies. The colony of Syracuse was there. And they decided, let's go conquer Sicily and put it under our domination. That's how cocky they were. And of course, this led to disaster. So they sent a naval expedition to go conquer Sicily, and it just sailed away and never came back. And that was it. And they were never heard from again. It was they were basically it was like Custer's, the 7th Cavalry. They just went out and they didn't come back. And so Athens really went off the rails. They went off the rails, they became intolerant. And this is how Socrates lost his life. And in the midst of all this, they basically made him a scapegoat for the fact that the war wasn't going well. And so Thucydides writes about all this, and eventually Athens loses the war. So the Thucydides Trap. So okay, so here's the theater of the Peloponnesian War. The blue is Sparta and its allies, and the red is Athens and its allies, some of which it's conquered. And notice though, this is important. This shows you the phoniness of this Thucydides Trap argument. Notice the yellow, if you can see the screen, the big yellow part, which is on current Asia Minor, which is now Turkey. This is long before the Turks were there. So the Persians came in, so it's not like Persians lived there. The Persians came in and conquered the Greeks that lived there, put them under their domination. And the Persian Empire was huge. It went all the way back to what is now Iran. This was just the edge of it. So the Greek city-states are basically living like flies on the edge of this huge beast of the Persian Empire. And this is one of the reasons why the Thucydides Trap is phony, according to some people, is because you had Athens and its empire, which was rising, but it's going to run into trouble. And Sparta didn't really have an empire, but it was an established power. And so the two of them came to a head. This is a map of ancient Athens, by the way. The Athens was just the old city, and then there was a port part, and they were connected by walls. It was really weird. This is anyway. all the idea of this Thucydides trap was taken by modern Ivy League historians, by one in particular, and it comes from one line in Thucydides: is it was the rise of Athens and the fear that this installed in Sparta that made war inevitable. The growth and the power of Athens and the alarm which this inspired in Lacedaemon. Lacedaemon just is a this is actually another translation of the same quote, I should say. This is the same quote. It just phrased. The growth of the power of Athens and the alarm that this inspired in Lacedaemon made war inevitable. So Lacedaemon, just another name for Sparta. Never knew why they had two names, but Sparta and Lacedaemon are the same. The Lacedaemonians is another name for the Spartans. So the rise of one power, the fear in the other, and this led to war, made it inevitable, says Thucydides. And this is the idea that's going to be picked up by this Ivy League historian. And he's going to say, basically, what he's going to prove in his thesis, and you could almost say it word for word, it was the rise of China and the fear that this installed in the United States that made war inevitable. That's his thesis. So he's just adapting this. But actually, I learned from this that actually it was not this Ivy League historian that even came up with this Thucydides trap notion. It was actually came up with Herman Wouk. What a name, right? Herman Wouk, who wrote The Winds of War and War and Remembrance. I saw those miniseries back in the 80s when I was in college. And also The Caine Mutiny, another great movie, motion picture. He actually gave a speech in 1980 that I think this Ivy League historian, he picked up on this. Herman Wouk, who wrote historical novels. So you remember that Athens and Sparta were the two great adversaries, the superpowers of the Greek world, that they had allied themselves to fight off and defeat a common enemy, Persia, and that after the victory, their alliance fell apart in a cold war. So you can tell what analogy he's making here. Herman Wouk is making. He just as easily said, you remember that the United States and the Soviet Union were the two great adversaries, the superpowers of the modern world. And they had allied themselves to fight off and defeat a common enemy, Nazi Germany. And that after that victory, their alliance fell apart in a Cold War. So again, it's historians trying to make sort of a cheap analogy with ancient history to prove a point that they already believe in. Because that, during the Cold War, it's like, oh, the Cold War is going to lead to nuclear war. And the idea among the intelligentsia during the Cold War was that the U.S. cannot, the West, we can't confront the Soviet Union. We can't confront them. Maybe a little bit. We can hold them in check, like containment, Truman. We can sort of hold them in check, but we can't confront them because that might lead to a nuclear war. So and you don't want that, right? You don't want a nuclear war. So we need to think in terms of peace. We need to make peace with the Russians, and the Russians are like, yes, you need to make peace with us. Make peace with us. They love the West was afraid of this big war that would happen if we ever tried to stop the communists from taking over anything. And this is what got JFK into trouble, right? Because JFK actually did want to everybody who wanted to confront the communists got taken down by the deep state. Douglas MacArthur, first of all, Patton wanted to confront the Russians. Douglas MacArthur wanted to invade China and kick the communists out of China. Oh, how'd that work out that we just let communists take over China? Oh, what was it, like 50 million dead, or was it 40 million? 50 million, 40 million, what's the difference? 10 million people that's a quote from the movie Fail Safe, by the way. Walter Matthau. Okay. So you can see it's this kind of cheap history. I call it cheap history. Cheap history. Here's the book that this guy wrote. What is his name? What is his name? Graham Allison. So this was in the Financial Times in 2012. So let me just make sure. Did I see another Rumble rant go by? No. Okay. Didn't. Right. So to make sure. Oh yeah, here's one. G. Henry. So the fear of a modification by another power, regardless of potential improvements, triggers the prevailing powers to defensively quash the new concept. I guess that's the idea. That's a good way of putting it, G. Henry. The question is it valid? So the guy who wrote this article, he wrote a book, and then he wrote, and the book is, I can't remember what the book's called. I took out some pages from it. Graham Allison, he's from Harvard. So he riffing off of Herman Wouk's speech about the U.S. and the Soviet Union, he's now going to talk about China and why we can't, why everything's going to go off the rails because we're afraid of China. And so he wrote this article in the Financial Times at the same time his book came out, I think. Thucydides Trap has been sprung in the Pacific. So this is 2012, and he's saying, that the U.S. and China are on a collision course for war because of the U.S. fear, because they're in decline, and China is the rising power. So this guy, Graham Allison. And so we'll get to him. We'll talk about him in a minute. Like where's he coming from, right? So, but this is interesting. We can talk about this for a minute. This is. Yeah. Again, it's always keep in mind that that academia, the academics they're always on the side of American defeatism. That the U.S. is they always want us to know that the U.S. is a declining power, and that other nations are on the rise. You know what time when they did this back in the 1930s, of course. Time magazine, Henry Luce, and Newsweek, founded by some other folks that will leave their names out for the moment. It was New York Times, Walter Duranty, very popular in the 1930s because remember, the Western world is in a depression. And people, the West is done. Look how it's in decline. And the Soviet Union is the rising power. Communism is the future. A lot of, Walter Duranty famously went over there and totally ignored what was happening in the Ukraine and sent all these reports back for the New York Times, won a Pulitzer Prize, saying how awesome things were in the Soviet Union. Everybody's living like a king, when in fact they were starving, and he knew it. He was just a total liar. These guys are always just lying. And of course, who did they also puff up and say was the future? Hitler, Nazi Germany, totally romanticized and glorified by Time magazine as the future of Europe in the 1930s. Democracy is old-fashioned. It can't cope with the modern world. The modern world needs the precision of an organized army-like society. And so we have an experiment going on in Russia that's doing that, and we have one going on in Germany, and that's the future. The academics and journalists were trying to tell us at the time. And of course, they were wrong. Just like they're wrong now. But they don't stop trying. Thucydides Trap has been sprung in the Pacific, Financial Times, from August 21st, 2012. So just before the Romney-Obama election. China's increasing, so this is by the guy, Graham Allison. China's increasingly aggressive posture towards the South China Sea and the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea is less important in itself than as a sign of things to come. For 6 decades after the Second World War, an American Pax Pacifica, Pacific Peace, has provided the security and economic framework within which Asian countries have produced the most rapid economic growth in history. However, having emerged as a great power that will take over the U.S. in the next decade to become the largest economy in the world, it is not surprising that China will demand revisions in the rules established by others. And they'll get them, of course, because they deserve them, because they're the vigorous new society on the rise, and we're the decrepit old society on the slide. Okay. The defining question about global order in the decades ahead will be, can China and the U.S. escape Thucydides' trap? The historian's metaphor reminds us of the dangers two parties face when a rising power rivals a ruling power, as Athens did in the 5th century BC, and Germany did at the end of the 19th century. Yeah, how'd that work out? So, all right, most such challenges have ended in war. Peaceful cases required huge adjustments in the attitudes and actions of the governments and societies of both countries involved. What that means is the U.S. needs to wake up and realize it's no longer in the position it was, and needs to accept the status, and needs to let China take over the driver's seat. We know, we lived through this time, right? We know that that's what they would say. Classical Athens was and so Thucydides Trap is basically, and don't blame Thucydides, by the way. I love Thucydides. I actually read him when I was on my first trip to Europe in 1985. I took a copy in my backpack with me, because I was on my way to Troy, the ruins of Troy, and I took a copy, Thucydides and the Iliad. I read those both when I was backpacking in Europe when I was 20. Classical Athens was the center of civilization. Philosophy, history, drama, architecture, democracy, all beyond anything previously imagined. This dramatic rise shocked Sparta. We established land power in the Peloponnese. Fear compelled its leaders to respond. Threat and counter-threat produced competition, then confrontation, and finally conflict. At the end of 30 years of war, both states had been destroyed. Now, okay, remember the Persian Empire being right there? Okay, I'll kind of come back to that. I'm gonna make, we got to get to that, because that's really where this whole thing unravels. Okay, Thucydides wrote of these events, it was the rise of Athens and the fear that inspired Sparta that made war inevitable. So we read that. Note the two crucial variables: rise of China, fear by the United States. We're a fearful nation. We fear these things happening to us, and we just need to accept them. That's what they want to tell us, right? All right, the rapid emergence of any new power disturbs the status quo. In the 21st century, is Harvard University's Commission on American National Interest. Oh God, what a thing that must be. Harvard's Commission on American National Interest. I wonder what they think of American national interest as being, okay. Anything that the city of London wants, probably. Okay. The rapid emergence of any new power. Okay, we read that. Never has a nation moved so far, so fast up the international rankings on all dimensions of power. Not only is China on the rise, they're like on number one with a bullet. They're just phenomenally awesome in their rise to power, right? We know how they think. Okay, so it goes on. If we're betting on the basis of history, the answer to the question about Thucydides' trap appears obvious. So this guy, Graham Allison, looked at 15 cases in history. I wish I had a chart of them. They go back to Portugal versus Spain in the 15th century. So around the time of the, we were talking about medieval history last week. Includes Germany versus England, Holland versus England, U.S. versus big one being the rise of the U.S. and the decline of Britain. But that's phony, and it's very phony. Okay, for some of the same reasons that the Athens Sparta thing was phony. Okay, let's just skip to the end. In light of the risks of such an outcome, he's talking about war. Leaders in both China and the U.S. must begin talking to each other much more candidly about likely confrontations and flashpoints, which we know what that means. It means China talks, we listen, right? That's what that means. Communists talk, Americans listen, right? Even more difficult and painful, both must begin making substantial adjustments to accommodate the irreducible requirements of the other. China must accommodate by realizing the Americans are fearful of being on the decline, and don't make America feel too bad that we're on the decline. That's China needs to do that. America just needs to realize, our days are over, really, and accept the lower status of living. Blah 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 blah. Right? We know that's what the Harvard Committee on American Interests, whatever. That's what they want to say. Here's some. So this is a really. Oh, that's the end. Okay. Let's get to why this is sort of phony. So there's a really great article by this guy, Richard Hanania. Hanania. He was born American political scientist. Went to the University of Colorado Boulder, got his history degree there. Yay, Boulder. He was born August 28th, 1985. That's like right after I came back from that trip where I read Thucydides. I was and went and studied classics at my transfer school. So I was like, oh, it makes me like him because I have such good memories about the time, August 1985. All right. Of course, he wrote for the alt-right and white supremacist publications. Okay, so he's a white supremacist, as is anybody that the left doesn't like. Basically, if you want to preserve Western civilization at all, then you're a white supremacist. We know that. Okay, so he's Christian, by the way, Greek Orthodox Palestinian, and his mother's Catholic Jordanian. So he's of Arab background, and he's both Orthodox and Catholic. Okay, interesting guy. I sort of like him. I've seen some of his stuff on YouTube as part of the Promethean Updates channel. So I did this video. This is a good video to watch. We don't have time. Maybe we can watch a little bit of this. Oh, so we need to share this tab instead. This video. So see, I'm learning that I got to do that. This video by Promethean Action. This is good. I love this channel. They're the view of the folks on to do Promethean Action is so close to the one I developed on my own through my own research, but it leans even more heavily on the idea that what we call the deep state and what we call the global empire had its origins and still is highly connected to the British imperial system of control from pre-World War II, and the British banking system, the British financial system, City of London financial system specifically, Lloyd's of London, and the Rhodes conspiracy, which was a well-known idea of integrating the U.S. back into the orbit of the Anglo-British, the British imperial system, and taking away the status of America as a self-standing country. So the guys at Promethean Action, it's actually women mostly there. It's Barbara and Susan are their names. Really great. I love their videos. I don't listen to them all because it's sort of the same thing they talk about, but I like where they're coming from a lot in talking about what's really going on in the world right now, and that that we're still fighting. We're really still fighting a war of independence, and that Trump knows this, and this is what this is all about. That taking out Iran. Iran is their cat's paw, their terrorist state that holds sway over the world by terrorism over the Strait of Hormuz and the nuclear threat. And Trump's taking that away from them. He already took the Lloyd's of London insurance thing away from them early on in the war. That was supposed to stop the whole thing, keep their control. He said, no, we'll insure the ships. It destroyed the monopoly of Lloyd's of London for 300 years, which was a key part of their control. Really, the idea is that the British Empire, it still exists, and it's still been as strong as ever. And you go, how can that be? The empire was dismantled after World War II, and India all the countries became independent, and then the king seems like we got to the monarchy have any real power, and what the British Navy and Army are so weak. How can you say that the British Empire is still as strong as ever? And I'm saying you're missing the point. You're missing the point. None of those things are necessary for an empire. The British Empire doesn't need an army and a navy. They have ours. They've had ours since World War II. We are the muscle for the British Empire imperial system. We are the intelligence gathering community. As Henry Kissinger, when he was Secretary of State, said that he told, according to Barbara in this video, says that of Promethean, that he would tell the British Foreign Service information before he would tell it the U.S. State Department, because he knew that this is the real system going on. So you don't need an army and a navy because they got the U.S. We are the muscle of this system. We have been. Trump is taking that away from them. NATO has been a structure to make, and it was, by the way, it was Americans who designed this system as much as the British. It wasn't like the British they infiltrated the U.S. establishment, but Americans cooperated with them because they wanted to be part of that. It was a core group of Americans right after World War II who set up the deep state and created this structure, including the Dulles brothers of Sullivan and Cromwell, created this system where the British Empire would go on, but it would be the American muscle and American intelligence supporting it and feeding all that to the city of London. And another thing, the idea of running the world, if you want to run the world, you don't want to have to control all the land. What a burden that is. It was a burden. They wanted to get rid of the land. They wanted to get rid of the colonies by then. That's the empire. No, that's just baggage. Having to govern all those places. Of course, you want the resources and you want the control, but you want to do it with, let's set the countries free, give them their independence, and then control them through the banking system. And that's how they did it, through the financial control of the City of London, including Lloyd's of London. See, it's a great system. The British system of control is that it like the Strait of Hormuz, it's a choke point. What you want to do if you want to run the world is you don't want to have to run everything. That's so much work. You just want to run and control the things that matter. And the scientific approach of British imperial control that became American imperial control, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Is that you only control what you need to. You maximize your leverage. If you don't need to control the whole world, if all you need to do is control the Strait of Hormuz and you've got the world economy, you only need certain banks. You only need certain financial institutions. It's like a skeleton crew of control, you see. And it's perfected. And it's been running the world. The Anglo-American version of it has been running the world since World War II. And it is synonymous with the deep state. It's synonymous with the swamp. It's synonymous with the uniparty. And it's coming to an end. Trump is taking it down. So at least that's the thesis of the Promethean action, folks. And I think it's correct. So, all right, we're at 7:20. So the basic gist of this video, we can watch this video. So what she's going to tell you in this video that we don't have time to watch is that this guy, what was his name? I'm going to go back to the tab. Graham Allison, the Harvard academic, who's pushing this idea of the Thucydides trap, and China is the new hegemon, inevitably. First of all, his history is shoddy. That the things he comes up with is wrong. He's even wrong about Athens and Sparta, because Athens and Sparta was not an isolated conflict. The Persian Empire was playing them both off each other. The Persian Empire was doing the master control of this game. And it wasn't just Athens and Sparta. It was Persia manipulating Athens and Sparta against each other. Does that sort of sound familiar? See, unless you take that into account, you're not going to come up with a deep analysis of what happened between Athens and Sparta if you don't take into account that the Persians were the real superpower at the time. And they, invading the Greeks, well, they learned their lesson from that. The Greeks are just let the Greeks have their freedom, but control them indirectly. And the best way to control them is to pit them off each other, divide and conquer loosely. All right. Now, the other thing, and the examples that Allison gives in his article, the 15 examples, they're so all over the map that it just made me laugh reading them. It's like, really, you're going to prove a historical rule from this? They're so different in every case. Coming up with any historical rule about it is so wrong. Okay, I could go into details, but we're coming up towards the end of the show. But really, the best part, the pièce de résistance in the Promethean action analysis of this is that this guy, Graham Allison, he was an acolyte of who? Who was he? Who was he a protege of? Henry Kissinger is the answer. Good old Henry Kissinger, the point man of the London-based financial order, of which the U.S. military has been the muscle, the enforcer. So this is totally Henry Kissinger. Thucydides Trap is Kissinger. It's City of London. It's this, and that's what we go back, and this is what they've been telling. This is why they're trying to tell us that we need to stop being so afraid of China and just accept our demotive. And Trump basically told them, went over to Beijing and said, "Screw this. No, we're the ones on the rise. Deal with it." And because America is self-regenerating partly because of our system of government, but it's not just our system. It's not just our democracy. Democracy, we know from one of the lessons of ancient Greeks is that democracy can corrupt. Athens was a democracy when it did all the stupid things that made it lose the war to Sparta. Aristotle saw that democracy leads to ruin. It eventually leads to tyranny because people vote the treasury to themselves. They just loot the treasury, and they simply don't know how to govern. And so America is strong because of the American people. I believe that. And I think most people listening probably believe that too. All right. Yeah, I knew it had to be the evil reptilian Kissinger. I just saw that go by in the chat. Who said that? Yeah, somebody mentioned Creature from Jekyll Island on Book Club. Yeah, we're following that too. Yes. Okay. All right. So I guess we got just a few minutes left. I'm gonna raid only lands. I did not say OnlyFans. I did not say that. Only lands. We're going to raid only lands here in a few minutes. But we do have one more sponsor. We've got. I was going to do the other sponsor. I even said so, didn't I? So anyway, do not be afraid of the Thucydides trap. But don't. It's sort of a stupid idea. Don't blame it. It's a phony deep state idea. But don't blame it on Thucydides. He was a smart guy. All right, so that's what I want to say, and we got to we got to get beyond this Kissingerian BS. Okay, all right. So what do we got here? We've got tonight's episode of Spellbreakers has been brought to you in part by oh, that's the overlays. It's in the videos, man. In the videos. Here we go.
Today we remember those who gave everything. And memory is never still.
This Memorial Day! One hero, one mission to deliver softness to America!
No, Chi-Chi, we can't stop your snacks, dude. We have to deliver all of these soft disclosure gift cards.
He goes by Zach Kane.
The motion detector!
Hey, stop fighting over the beer brush.
Life finds a way.
Hydrate your elbows! Moisturize your soul! Feel the rhythm together! You feel alive and let the lotion roll! Soft disclosure!
Hit it.
All right, two more notes before we wrap up. Please do give a thumbs up if you like the show tonight. Please do give a thumbs up before you leave, and really would appreciate that. Also, tickets are on sale for Guard Deadwood coming up next month, June 25th to 28th, Deadwood, South Dakota. These fine people are going to be there, including me. So please do consider buying a ticket, or virtual tickets are on sale now. We would really appreciate that. And by the way, our sponsor, Tamarack Gardens, check them out on the America First broadcast, episode 3. That was part of one of the things I was supposed to tell you. So yeah, Guard is going to be awesome. Everybody loves Deadwood. That's their favorite place to go to. So please do consider going if you can. And now I'm going to send you over to OnlyLands. Thank you all. Thank you, Spetzel, for providing the link. Thank you, Hello Daisy. Thank you all for your wonderful comments for tonight's show. And like I said, if you can find it to give a like before you go out, please do so. So here we go, and then I'm going to play off the outro, and I will see you over in OnlyLands. Confirm raid. I'm raiding over there. So here we go. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.